So, welcome everyone to today's program. I'm really pleased to have Megan come to speak with us. Megan's a friend of mine, is in another networking group that I run, and is a very warm and welcoming person. She is a TEDx speaker. She's a best-selling author of Look Into My Eyes is her most recent book, and Metamorphosis. That is a mouthful. A combination of metamorphosis and justice. Um, so you definitely want to check her out. She's a former school superintendent who has built a very successful consulting practice around her brand as the Authenticity Amplifier. Um, and I'm sure she will tell us more. So I will leave it with that. And Megan?
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I'm excited to be with you all today. On the screen right now, you will see a QR code that's slightly large. And then Liz from my team will also put a link in the chat. Both of those will go to the workbook. The workbook is not meant to be a fill this in like you're in college and we're going to be giving you the answers as we go through. It's really meant as an opportunity for you to be able to engage in the material that we'll be talking about. So please feel free to have that workbook accessible. Again, if you prefer it on your phone, scan the QR code on the screen with your phone. If you prefer to have it on the computer, then just hit the link that's in the chat. We do use a short link a link shortener, bit.ly. So you will see some ads. Unfortunately, we use the free version because why pay for something if it's just as good free? So you will see some ads, but it will take you there. So I'm excited to be with you all today. As we go through today's experience, my goal is to share some insights with you, and also just to really help us all be able to reflect on our current environment. So throughout this, I'll share some of my own personal experiences. And by the end of our session, my goal is that you feel more empowered into what your next step is. So, as John shared, I'm Megan Fuciarelli. I'm actually zooming in from the Detroit, Michigan area. But I spent most of my adult career in the Chicagoland area. As John shared, I'm a retired school superintendent, and I'm no longer doing that school superintendent work. And I want to, before we dive in too much into the work itself and into the presentation, I want to start off with sharing a little bit about how I got to where I am today. As John shared, I'm a best-selling author, I'm a TEDx speaker, I have a consulting firm. It was not always like this. I am the only entrepreneur in my family. I still have family members who say, "Oh, Megan's unemployed." At one point with my job, I had 43 team members, but according to my family, because I'm not working for someone else, I'm unemployed. I don't know if any of you can relate to that idea of family saying a different story than what's actually the truth, right? But I had to have that moment of reflection for myself because I was facing my own job transition. See, I was a school superintendent, I'd worked in schools for many years, and I had enough years vested to retire. But I knew that I didn't want to necessarily retire. I wasn't at the stage where I would be able to provide for my family if I retired. I had enough years vested, but I couldn't start collecting retirement yet. So I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I make things work? I had to decide right there, right then, right there, whether I was going to go back into the school system, which I enjoyed, but it wasn't filling my soul, or if I was going to truly dive into something that would fill me up from the inside. And I took that second choice and it was scary. And some of the things I'm going to talk about today will help you be able to see whether that is something that is good for you as well. Because I took that transition, which was very scary. Not only did I go from being a superintendent to basically having zero income, I went from six figures to zero to build it all up again. But I also moved from Chicago back home to Michigan to be closer to my parents. Because what I realized throughout that whole process is that family was the most important thing to me. Making a difference, making an impact was most important to me. It wasn't about I'm looking for a job that has this job title. And I know when we're looking for a job, when we're in that job search, we're often saying, okay, I want to be a fill in the blank with a title. What I'm going to encourage all of us to do as we go through today is instead of looking for a title, we're looking for how a position will make you feel. What experiences are you looking to gain in that job? What are your non-negotiables? Okay. That's how we want to go through this. Okay. So let's go ahead and just do some quick introduction. Like I said, I will be sharing some stories as we go through, but the main piece of all of this is we're going to walk through, as promised, that AWE framework. And the AWE framework stands for awareness, wisdom, and empowerment. And as we're going through this, I want to share some of those first pieces because career change can be extremely scary. Job transition oftentimes is not necessarily something that you have chosen for yourself. Sometimes you choose to transition to something different, but it is first implemented through something that was outside of your control, right? And I want to be very clear with that because I know that everyone's situations are slightly different. So, as we're talking about this, I want us all to lean in and be willing to share whatever we feel comfortable sharing. Okay. So when we think about the idea, excuse me, of career change, the first piece is how uncertain it is. You know, when I first said, well, I have enough years vested to retire. I could get another job. I could go to another state. A lot of educators do that, right? They go to another state and then collect a second level of retirement or a third level of retirement. I know many people in the education system who have retired from 3 states. I could have done that. That would have been the easy path. That would have been the path that so many other people expected of me. But I didn't know if I was able to do that. I had self-doubt. I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this again. I had a young child. I was a single parent. And I didn't know what was going to happen. How many of us can relate with that? There's so many options and there's not enough options all in the same time. Can we relate to that idea? Right? Because the truth is, there's so many options out there. There's so many different careers out there that you could do, but everything that you can do doesn't mean you need to do it. Right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean that it's the right fit for you. So then the next step was, okay, yes, I can do a lot of jobs. I can go be a superintendent again. I can go back to teaching again. There's a lot of things I can do, but I had to figure out, what do I want to do? Because I enjoyed teaching. How many of us enjoyed the last position we were in? Or maybe our current position if we're thinking about job transition? About half, right? There were things I enjoyed about it, but it didn't light me up from the inside. So what I did is I took the opportunity to realign. I took the opportunity to say, okay, now is the moment. As scary as this is, I can sit here and say, well, I guess I'll just do what everyone expects of me, right? Or I guess I'll just take the next job that comes along. Or I can really sit back and say, what do I actually want? What are my passions in life? Now, I'm not here to say that it was easy. My first 2 years, we're celebrating 10 years tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow is our 10-year anniversary as a company. When I first started out, I thought I was going to own my job. I had no intention of owning a business. I had no intention of having a team. I thought I would just work a couple gig contracts, right? And I built a team because what I learned is when I follow my passion, when I was really clear on what my values were, things started to come to me. Because when we are aligned to our values, we become magnets for things that are also aligned. And when we are not clear on that, we are repelling everything away. Okay. So I want to address some of the other pieces I'm seeing here too, because Monica, what you just put in chat is extremely vulnerable, and I appreciate that. And we're going to talk about not just what we believe and what we feel about ourselves, but what society is telling us about ourselves in the job search, right? Because I believe every single person is struggling with either imposter syndrome, which is that internal self-doubt, or external doubt, right? Where society and people are trying to put you in a box of what you can or can't do based on identity or based on experiences, and how we can break through that box. And the number one way to break through whatever mold people are trying to put us in, maybe even ourselves put us in, is to be really strong on our values and to align with those values. So we'll walk through some exercises today on how you can do that. Okay. Now, again, I want to be really clear. I'm not here to promise all of you that if you do this work today, you'll have 17 job offers by the end of the day today. My goal in this conversation is to help you feel more confident and more aligned with whatever decision you choose to take next. That is my hope, because job transition can be extremely deflating. It can be extremely difficult. And it can be an awesome opportunity to align to your next step. And that's what I want us to lean into, is that second part of it being an awesome opportunity. Okay. And all of you are taking that first step by being here right now. Community support, networking groups like Beacon, other groups you might be involved with, whatever you are looking at, making sure that you are not navigating this alone, because look around, everyone in this room is here because we are either considering job transition or in the middle of job transition. You are not alone. I have had positions where they've had the conversation with me of, you might want to try and find another position. So technically, I chose to leave, but really, did I? Right? And I've had other situations where I have made the choice of, this is not filling my system anymore. This is not filling my cup. So I wanted to leave. And I know that all of us are in different situations. The first piece is to have that aligned community support and to realize, whether you feel alone or not, no one deserves to be lonely. And today we're going to be able to lean on each other as we have some of these conversations. Now, I know John mentioned that it will be recorded. Please know that I have asked that the recording stop before we do Q&A at the end. So if you would like to ask any questions and not be on record of those questions, we're not recording the Q&A session. Okay, so I just want to make sure that's really clear for people who are wanting to lean in. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into core values. So I want to go back to that time where I was in Chicago and I was saying, okay, I can retire from the school system and I can lean into what I truly love to do. But what exactly is that? What I learned really quickly is my number one goal was family. I had a young son at the time. He was 5. I was a single parent. My parents were in Michigan, 6 hours drive away. And I said, what am I going to do? How am I going to do what I need to take care of my son, feel alive again, and be able to be there for my parents? Because if anyone else can relate, I'm a sandwich generation. Anyone else taking care of their parents and their children at the same time? Right? That's me. I'm an only child, so I'm all my parents have. And I'm a single parent, so I'm all my son has. And I was a superintendent, so I was all the school district had. That was a lot of pressure. And what I realized is, first and foremost, my family needed to come first. I loved working with the schools. I loved working with education. And I loved my family more. And at first, I felt guilty saying that. At first, I said, well, I made this commitment to be a superintendent. I made this commitment to be an educator. Whatever your roles are, I made this commitment to have this job title. And I know it sounds cliche, but the idea of you need to put your own oxygen mask on before you help anyone else put theirs on is true. So as you start thinking about what is important to you as you go into your next job. Think about what will be that oxygen mask for you. Because if you're not happy, if you don't feel aligned with what you're doing, everyone around you will be able to sense that. And productivity around you will start to decrease. Now, I know that some of the questions were sent out ahead of time. Thank you to those of you who completed that. Some of the things that came through in that were, well, I have skill sets, or I'm noticing that the job description is having this one description here that I get in the job, and they're asking me to do the job of 6 people. Can anyone else relate to that idea? Here's the thing. Some of us, when we think about our core values, some of us actually want to feel so needed that we're doing a little bit of everything. And that's why it's important to understand what your values are. So I want to walk you through a values exercise. This is also in your workbook, okay? So I don't want you to necessarily do a lot of the deep right now, but I want you to start thinking about it. And I'd love to have conversation if we can around this. Okay? So, when you are thinking about what your next career might be, the very first thing to do is look at what are you wanting to achieve. And I saw this in some of the responses we got in when I said, what are you hoping to find in your next position? Very few people talked about how they will feel in the next position. So, I want us to think about that. Okay. How do you want to feel? Do you want to feel needed? There's nothing wrong with that. Do you want to feel trusted? Do you want to feel valued? Do you want to feel invisible? Some people actually want to feel invisible. They want to just blend into the background. So it's the ability to really define what you are looking for and be okay with that and not feel like, oh, this is the answer I'm supposed to give. This is how I'm supposed to feel. Instead, what do you truly want to feel? What is important to you? So, what I want to do now is share. We have 6 core values for Us Squared, which is my company where I have a team. So, right now, we're talking about our personal core values. I want to share the business core values because I want to make the connection of how the two can blend. Because once you have a strong understanding of your core values, what you want to feel, what you stand for, then you can go into an organization and see if your values are aligned with the organization's values. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into this. The first one is curious. So when I'm thinking about the idea of curious, when we're hiring people for our organization, I want people who are curious, who ask questions. Now, there are some organizations who do not want you to ask questions, right? Now, very rarely will organizations put that out on their website, but what they will put on their website is they want people who are willing to go with status quo. They want people who are willing to listen to leadership or listen to leadership philosophy. That they might put on their website because that's a safe way of saying, don't question us. Now, again, neither one of those is wrong. If you are someone who likes to be a follower, again, nothing wrong with it. We need followers just as much as we need leaders. Then own it and look for an organization who wants to hire followers. If you are a leader, then look to organizations that want to hire leaders, and not just organizations who say they want to hire leaders, but actually live through their values. Okay. So that's the first piece. And again, what I want you to think about as we're going through this is what is important to you. Okay. What is important to you, not what's right or wrong. Don't look at this and say, oh, I agree with that. I don't agree with that, right? Just what is important to you. Okay. Because I will tell you 100% there are companies who are not looking for people who will ask questions. Those are some of the companies we work with the most. Or they say they want people who are curious, but then when people start to ask questions, they call them insubordinate and they're let go. So, reality, they're not actually looking for people to ask questions. So, again, it's about aligning and kind of going back to what Peter shared. It's about aligning what we say we do compared to what we actually do. So, what I want you to think about is what are your core values? Because when you are interviewing, it is not just about the business saying that you are a good fit for them. I want you to take this opportunity to determine if they're a good fit for you. Okay. But this first stage of awareness is just figuring out what are your core values and what are the core values of the organization, figuring out if that is in alignment. Okay. Our next one is very heart centered. So, what I mean by that is if I have someone who is not very emotionally intelligent, they're probably not going to be a good fit. There are people who are higher on the emotional intelligence. There are people who are higher on book knowledge. There are people who are higher on social intelligence, right? Again, there's no right or wrong. It's about what do you want? If you are someone who's not terribly comfortable with emotions, you probably don't want to work for an organization that encourages open conversation of emotions, right? And I know some of this sounds silly, but we're not talking about all of you can look at a job description and say, yes, I can do those tasks. We're not going to talk about tasks today. We're going to talk about how will you feel going to that job every day? How are you going to find the job that you actually are excited to go to every day? Because when you're excited to go to work, and yes, there's going to be things you don't like. There's things I don't like about my job right now, and I created it, right? I have no one to blame except for myself, right? There's always going to be things that you don't like. Just like every relationship, there's going to be moments where they're harder than others. But are your positives going to outweigh your negatives? And are you going to be happy doing this for the next chapter of your life? So for me, it's very important to be able to have people who can have open, honest conversations about their emotions and not feel guarded. Okay. The next part, sorry, I'm bringing up the word again, authentic. Okay. Now, what we talk about with authentic is not encouraging people to be themselves because I can't tell Joe how to be Joe. Only Joe knows how to be Joe. I can't tell Ellen what to do to make everyone think Ellen is really Ellen, right? I can't do that because I don't know them as well as they know themselves. What we do is we want to embrace people to accept the authenticity and embrace the authenticity of others. So, another way of saying this is I want people who are open minded, who are willing to accept people for everything they come to the table as. So, I don't hire a leader or leaders or managers who think they have the only right way to do something, right? I want people who are willing to listen to the thoughts and ideas of others, regardless of how old they are, how long they've been on the job, regardless of what lived experiences they've had, regardless of where they went to school. We see so much of that of, oh, this person went to this Ivy League school, so they have the best ideas. They're going to always be the one making the decision. I don't believe in that. I want people to be able to be honest and transparent and listen to everyone because I believe everyone has great experiences and great insights that they can bring to a conversation. Okay. Nurturing. I want environments where we uplift each other and not put each other down. How many of us have ever been in a business organization where it feels like we are attacking each other or putting each other down? It's a competition within an organization. I don't want that. That's something that's in my values. Now, all of you might be saying, okay, I'm not opposed to any of this. What I'm asking you to do is not just say what you're not opposed to. I want you to choose your 5 to 7 top things that you need to have in your next position. What are your need to haves? Not your nice to haves, but your need to haves. Don't focus on these are the jobs I want to do. These are the tasks I want to do. This is what I want. Now, one thing you'll notice as we go through it, I'm going to share the last two, but I don't have anything about money here. If money is important to you, because guess what? Money is what pays the bills. It's how we survive. I get that. If you have a specific amount you need to make, then definitely have that there. What I encourage you to do, though, is instead of saying the ultimate dream amount, consider this is what I need to make, and anything above that is great. So if money is a factor for you, which I understand it is for many, then I want you to consider sharing your minimum as your goal and then saying it would be great to have more, but really focus on how you will feel. Because if you feel more aligned and you find the company who values you for what you bring to the table, you will often see an increase in your salary as you're continuing. Because here's the truth, if a company sees all of the value you bring and they don't honor that, then they're not really seeing the value you bring. Okay. The last two, and then I want to get into the next piece here because I want to honor everyone's time, is goal oriented. I am very focused and I like to bring people into the organization who are aligned to goals, who are very action oriented. I don't want to talk to people who are just going to bring in the philosophical components all the time. Okay. And then encouraging. So we are in this together. So let's go ahead and go into the awe process specifically. Okay. When we are looking specifically at the awe process, again, it's awareness, wisdom, and empowerment. So the first step is awareness of, do you know who you really are? Do you know what values you truly stand for? Okay. So there's a couple pieces. And again, these are all in the workbook. But when we're thinking about awareness, how many times do you actually self-reflect? So what I want to do now is I'm going to go through 6 different pieces that you can consider. And I want you to think of one of these. So as we're talking about them, just say, okay, this is the one I'm going to do. Just choose one. And I'm going to ask you all at the end which one you chose. Okay. So the first one is self-reflection. Have you taken a moment to really identify without guilt, without shame, without oh, I should have been able to do this? But do you truly know what your motivations and your strengths and your weaknesses are? Do you know why you get up to do what you do every day? Do you know what you're strong in? Not what other people say you're strong in, but do you know what you're strong in? Not necessarily what you like to do, because that's your motivations, that's your passions. I'm talking about your strengths, what you're really good at. Okay. So are you willing to self-reflect and really take a quick assessment of what your strongest motivations are, what your strongest strengths are, and what your weaknesses are? Okay. The next thing you could do within awareness, again, there's going to be 6 different options here, is to identify your core values. Do you know your core values? Again, between 5 and 7 core values. Okay. Do you know those things that make you who you are, that are non-negotiables for you? Do you truly know what lights you up inside? Do you truly know what makes you happy? So I recently met with someone who was in job transition because I also do quite a bit of coaching as well. And I recently met up with someone who said, I really love working with kids, but I'm an engineer by trade. There's no way I can work with kids as a job. I'm just going to have to volunteer or be a mentor. And through that conversation, we were able to identify exactly what he was passionate about, what it was about working with children that he loves so much. And then we started to brainstorm what are different positions that might allow him to live through his core values and to really live out his passion. Within 2 weeks, he had a job offer. Now, I'm not saying that's the norm. I'm not saying that's an everyday piece, but that's the most recent person we spoke with. When you are able to align your passions, you become more excited about finding a position that aligns to that. It becomes less about just finding a job to be able to pay the bills or to be able to get into a place. It becomes more about, oh my gosh, I can actually get paid for doing what I love. Because here's the dream: I do what I do because I love it. It's a benefit that I get paid. And when you can say that, if any of you have ever experienced that, if any of you say, that one job I had, I would have done it even if I didn't get paid. If I had money to pay bills, right? I'm taking out that money equation, right? But if you would have done it, regardless of the pay, as long as your family was taken care of, that's the dream. We all want to be in a position that we would do regardless, as long as our family was taken care of. And I don't want to trivialize or minimize the impact and the importance of money. I get it. I do 100%. That's why I'm never going to say don't take a job because it doesn't make enough, or I understand all of that. And I can see, I can feel, I've seen, not only experience myself, but I've seen people that we've worked with who have followed their passions and truly love what they do and are making more financially than they ever did before when they finally align with their passions. Now, instead of being like everyone else, instead of fitting in like everyone else, your authenticity, sorry, I'm using the word, but your uniqueness is what stands you apart. And instead of trying to be like everyone else, what I want you to do is find that quirk that makes you uniquely you and market it. Instead of hiding the fact that you have OCD, or instead of hiding the fact that you are extremely particular, or instead of hiding the fact that you've worked a couple different positions, or that you've been in transition for 6 months, instead of hiding that fact, highlight it. Embrace that as, I am uniquely positioned for this position because I have been in transition of job, or I've been unemployed, however you want to word it, but I've been unemployed for 8 months. I acknowledge and recognize the struggle of not having a job. And I have had the opportunity to reflect on what's truly important to me, right? You can spin everything in your life. And instead of hiding those pieces that make you unique, I want you to highlight those pieces. The thing that you think is the least desirable quality about yourself can be the one thing that makes someone want to hire you. So I just invite you to consider, what is that and what has it taught you about who you are today? And the last piece that I'm inviting you to think about is emotional intelligence. If you feel like it is not something that is your skill set, or you're not as aware of what emotional intelligence looks like, or your own level of emotional intelligence, I would strongly encourage you to dive in a little bit deeper. Because right now in our workforce, especially with AI, because I know you have an AI session, I think tomorrow, right? Especially with AI, especially with the changing dynamics of the workforce, AI can never replace human emotional intelligence. AI can replace a lot of the task, which is why I am telling all of you not to focus on the task in the job description. Instead, focus on how it can make you feel and how you can make your colleagues feel and your supervisors feel and your team feel when you're in that position. Because AI will never have the feeling component. Now, are they training levels of AI with emotional intelligence? Absolutely. Right? My chat GPT AI does think that I'm very kind to it. And it does tell me that I'm very nice. And some of you may be chuckling because I have fallen into some of the traps that you see on social media where you ask chat GPT, create a picture of how I treat you. So I know that ChatGPT thinks I treat it very nice because I was cuddling a robot and saying, "You're so great. Thank you so much, Chat." Like that's how I was treating mine. And my partner, who's who's on the team, her chat GPT told her that she had a coffee funnel running to it, like, do more, do more, do more. And I said, oh, but it still was laughing and having a good time. So again, I say that to say how we can talk to one another, how we can relate to one another will make all the difference. So if you're not aware of emotional intelligence, if you feel like, ooh, I don't know, that's not really me, I get it. And if you're willing to dive into it, it might help you with that level of awareness. Okay. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear from maybe one of you if you're willing to. Which of these six strategies, which of these strategies are you willing to try to build up your level of awareness in job transition? I'm going to go ahead and go back to the
Feel free to
top
unmute
here.
yourself if you want to participate.
Yes, please. So we've got them up here. If you can see, I know it's kind of small, but the power of self-reflection, core values, passions, individuality, and emotional intelligence.
I'm happy to be brave and go. I think
Awesome.
what
Thank you,
really,
Melissa.
yeah, thank you, Megan. I think what really resonated with me, I believe it was where you were talking about embracing individuality. I am someone like you gave the example of who's been in search for about 7 to 8 months. And I think it's definitely been a roller coaster, because there have been multiple searches where I'm the finalist and you get really excited. You can imagine yourself doing the work and where you're going to create the impact, and then it's not you. So recognizing that my opportunity is still out there, and I think how you framed it as being a positive of where we can create impact, like really struck me with where I'm at today. So I appreciate that.
Love that. Thank you for sharing, Melissa. And incorporating and sharing some of your experience with that will
Yeah.
resonate because here's the truth. People who are looking to hire right now recognize that the job market is tough, right? It's not a secret. And when we can bring in the human intelligence, and here's my point, if you are someone who's looking for the human element and you bring in that human element to a job interview and they're turned off by that, guess what? You don't want to work there anyway. And that's what I talk about with the authenticity. And when I bring in the idea of embracing individuality and being your true self, I'm not saying be the person that goes out on Friday night at the club at midnight. I'm not talking about being that version of your true self. We all have different versions of who we are. I am always myself, but I am speaking to all of you very differently than how I speak to my 15-year-old son compared to how I speak to my parents, compared to how I speak to my friends going out for mimosas. I am still me. I'm still an authentic version of myself in all of those situations. I simply present it differently because of the environment we're in. And I encourage you to present in a way that is still true to you in every situation instead of fitting into what people think you want to be, right? Or what you think people want you to be. Because I believe that and John just put it in here, but every rejection is actually an opportunity, and every transition is an opportunity for something else. And it's up to us to determine if that's going to be an awesome opportunity or a horrendous opportunity.
I've had a
Okay.
friend who called me up one day into his new job to tell me he needed to quit because he had walked into absolutely the wrong job, the wrong environment. And he did. He quit within a week. And within a few weeks after that, he landed a great job that he's been doing for the last decade and has been very
Mm-hmm.
successful at.
Right. And it is about being exactly who you, and that's why I say if you don't know, and I'm quoting a lot of things right now, but that's important to me because I think it resonates in a different way. But if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? So if you don't know what you stand for, then you will fall into the trap of allowing other people to tell you what you stand for. So I encourage you to do that values work. Ellen, yes.
Yeah, I think they all tie in together, knowing your true passions, your core values, living them, being yourself, knowing your audience's emotional intelligence. They all tie in together. And, as a trainer, I used to tell people, and hopefully I will soon, again, don't think about, you know, who you want to be, like that title. Think about what you want to do. The same thing. What is that passion?
Yeah.
And that quirkiness, that's
Yeah.
really great. That's going to make you stand out. That's part of your personal brand. Oh, he's the one who, that's how people remember you.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just did I asked Copilot, you know, the same thing. It drew a picture for me. Pretty interesting.
Interesting. And if we have time at the end, I'd love to see that, Ellen, or just send it over to me. There's a couple prompts that I've asked my chat GPT based on social media things, and it's just very interesting. And I will say, if you use chat GPT, because some of you might be struggling, I don't know what my values are. How do I figure that out? I have exercises that I can send over. They're worksheet exercises that you walk through. Also, if you use chat GPT or Claude or any of your systems on a regular basis, if you ask it, based on what you know about me, what do you think my core values are? It will actually spit out some pretty accurate information if you use it accurately and you use it on a regular basis.
I've actually done that exercise with my classes too. Pick your top five and then your top
Yep,
one. And then I ask, are you living it? Are you living that value?
exactly. Right. And for me, it's about impact. Everything I do is about impact. When I was younger and I first went into education, it was changing the world, right? We all have that utopic sense of I'm going to be the change we wish to see in the world, which my camera's slightly lower right now, but that's written on my wall, right? That was my utopic version. Then it became I want to make an impact for my son. Then it became I want to make an impact for future generations I'll never get to meet, right? But it's always been about impact. It's always been about making a difference. It's always been about doing something larger than myself. It's about finding your red thread, but you have to be aware of that red thread before you can go to the next phase of wisdom. So if you don't know what that common thread is, whether it's your core values, your passion, if you don't know what that is, that's the first step. Once you have that first step done, once you know what your core values are, you know what your passion is, you know what you need to do in your next career. Again, not what title it is, but what you want to do, what you want your passion to be, what you want to make an impact on. What will you feel in that position, whatever that is? Then you go into the next phase, which is wisdom. And this is where you're gaining the insights. This is when you're actually making those decisions. So, first, you know what you're looking for. Now you have to find it, right? So, what we want to do is there's three things we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on informed decision making. So, when you are looking for a position, instead of looking for a title, I want you to look for companies that are aligned to your values. So this is something to consider. Okay. And I think I'm going to mute. Yeah. That's something to consider. Okay. So how you can do that is once you have all of your values, then I want you to go into either a Google search or AI, whatever your preferred AI search is, and say, these are my personal values. I'm looking for a company. I'm looking for an organization. I'm looking for a place where I can be aligned, where I can feel like I fit in this organization. Which companies or what should I look for? Is there a specific sector I should look for? Because many of you, at least the ones who filled out the pre-application, you have skills that are transferable to many organizations. So it's not about, I need to work in this industry. It's, I'm a trainer and I can work in any industry. These are my values. Then ask Google, ask AI, ask those technology devices that we have accessible to us. Here are my values. Here are my passions. What are positions, or what are companies, not positions, what are companies that align to my values? That's how we make informed decisions. And don't wait for a posting to go up on Indeed. Contact the hiring person, contact the HR person and say, I was recently doing some research and your company XYZ is so aligned to how I operate as a person. I'm not sure if you're hiring right now. If you are, here's my resume and I'd love to chat. If you're not hiring, I'd love to get to know you simply because your values of your organization are so aligned to me as a person. Would you be open to a conversation? Schedule a quick 15-minute get to know you chat with a company that you admire and that you can see yourself working in, because even if they're not hiring, they're going to be able to give you the names of other companies who are similar to themselves. Example, I'm a B Corp. B Corp is using business as a source for good. I am aligned to other businesses who believe that business can be used as a force for good. So when people are telling me I'm looking for a position and they might have a specific skill set, I know exactly, depending on their values, if they're in my network, then they're probably pretty aligned to my values. And I can introduce them to people in that same network who are aligned to similar values. But how we make informed decisions is by doing our research. I strongly recommend and invite you to consider finding that one or two companies that are aligned to your values once you've done that first phase and scheduling a time to chat. Don't go in selling yourself. Go in with genuine curiosity and say, I just really appreciate what your company stands for. And I'm not sure if you're hiring or not, but if you're not, I'd still love to just connect. Would you be open to helping me? Because most people want to help other people. They just don't want to feel like they're helping you because you're asking them to do it or because it's a transaction. They want to help because they want to feel like they're being a good person, like they're being helpful. Okay. The next piece is intentional networking. So you're coming to this session, which is great. The next thing I would recommend is, if you're not involved with an association, consider getting involved with a professional association in your field. So whatever your field is, this is where you're going to talk about your field, not your passions, not your impact, but your general, like your ecosystem. Get involved in a network, an association, go to a yearly conference, whatever it might be. Maybe it's a chamber of commerce. Maybe it's an identity focused chamber of commerce. I'm also a WeBank business, which means I'm women owned. And I'm also an NGLCC business, which is the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, because those are important communities for me. So I have different communities that I can be present in, that I can go to, whether it's B Corp, whether it's NGLCC, whether it's WeBank. But find an organization that is important for you to surround yourselves with intentional networking opportunities. And the last piece is identify your people. Please, please, please stop doing the spray and pray method on LinkedIn. Please, please, please do not ask to be connected to everyone under the sun on LinkedIn. When you can be intentional with your network, then you will build stronger relationships and stronger connections. Okay. So those are the three things that you can do to increase your bandwidth, your network. Okay. Then we move into the actual action, which is the empowerment. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly so that we have time for Q&A. I'm, according to my timer, and I'm about 45 minutes is where I'm at. So I think I'm doing okay. Let me know, John, if I'm not. Give me the evil eye. I speak the evil eye language. So phase 3 with action. Now, this is where you're actually going to take all that information. You have the awareness, the understanding of where you are, what actually makes you tick. You have the wisdom of how you're going to make those connections. Now you're actually going to move into action steps of that. This is where you're actually taking that action. The first piece, and I want us all to remember, self-reflection is key. Whether you journal, whether you just take a moment to reflect every day, whatever that looks like for you. I am a huge proponent of self-reflection. I don't journal very often. What I do is I do voice notes. What I do is I do take time to reflect. I have certain places that I'll go and just sit and think. I have windshield conversations with myself. Anyone else have those? Those are when you're in the car by yourself and you're just talking. And you're like, oh, I should have recorded that. That was good. I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that. Right? Some people have those shower conversations. For me, it's windshield conversations. What is your space? And commit to ensuring that you continue it, whatever it is. And make it something that you do on a regular basis. So I drive a lot. Windshield conversations are perfect. Hopefully you shower on a regular basis. So shower conversations are good too. Right? Don't do I'll reflect when I'm sitting on the beach in the Bahamas. Like, how often does that really happen? I mean, good for you if it happens a lot. I'm happy for you. I'm kind of jealous. But make sure that whatever you choose as your time for self-reflection is a time that you can do on a regular basis. Make sure you set clear goals. Because if we don't set goals, we will never accomplish them. And I want you to set realistic goals. And I also want you to set what we call BHAG. That's the big, hairy, audacious goal, right? I want you to set one of those too. And I want to share an example of a big, hairy, audacious goal that I had, because remember, I was a school superintendent. I was successful according to society. But I remember when I left that position, I said, oh, I think I want to do a TED Talk. I was like, there's no way I'm going to do it, but I want to do it, right? I put it on my vision board. I said, I'm going to do a TED Talk. I now have two. About 5 years ago, I said, I've written a lot of articles, but I really want to write a book. I have two, and they're both international bestsellers. I didn't think any of that was possible. Because according to most of my family, I'm unemployed. Right? It's about what is important and what goals have I set. Now, I still have huge goals, and I have goals that are very attainable and much more aligned and a little bit easier to track. At the same time, I know that by taking away the big goals, if our goals aren't scaring us, I'm not sure they're big enough. So I make sure at every given point, I have at least one goal that scares the heck out of me. Because that's what's going to move mountains. Okay. And I want you to consider how you can take those proactive steps. Not just reactive, proactive. So, as I'm sure some of you can probably imagine, some of the work, and a lot of people have been impacted by the current administration. And in 2024, in the summer of 2024, I knew that regardless of what the results would be in the fall of 2024, half of the country would be upset. It just was the facts, right? Half the country would be upset. And I knew that that was going to be the case. So what I did is I worked with my team and we created 3 business plans, one for if Harris won, one for if Trump won, and one for if we had another January 6th. And we had all 3 of those plans in place so that when the decision was announced in November of 2024, we didn't have to react. We simply had to act on the plan that was already created. We simply had to implement what was already there. We took proactive steps so that we weren't acting in reaction, because I'm sure many of us can relate to the idea that when we react, we often are not making as strong or as good or as positive of decisions as we could if we were simply proactively implementing something we had already come up with. When we have time to digest and plan, we often make better decisions. So in the workbook, you have some ways of how you can create your action plan. The number one piece I want to leave you all with today is that you are not alone. Everyone on this call is experiencing job transition. It might look different. I don't believe that we're all in the same boat. Even during COVID, when people were talking about that idea, I did not believe that we were all in the same boat. I believe that we are all in the storm, and all of us have different ways of sheltering from that storm. And what we need to do is come together with all of our resources and support one another to provide whatever resources we can to one another, because we are not alone and none of us need to be alone. So when you're thinking about how you build your network, make sure that you leverage opportunities. John talked about how he's going to give out the list of people that you can connect with from today's meeting. Make sure you do that survey so that you can get that list. Make sure that you take advantage of I hope that you're getting something from listening to me, and you're going to get even more by talking to each other. Okay. Become a part of professional communities, whether that is a chamber of commerce, whether that is one specific to a sector like SHRM, right? HRCI. There's a lot of different opportunities out there. And also harness the power of social media. Social media, I will say personally, I don't like it. I'm very lucky and blessed that I have a team that helps me with it, because if I was having to do it myself, it would be I posted once a month, if that. I have a team that helps. And I also know that there is power in social media. I'm not asking you to get out and do professional grade pictures. What my team has really helped me realize is doing those human elements are going to be more powerful. So I post a lot of content on my social media. The post that has gotten the most traction is actually a story that I shared about a ring that I used to wear on my right hand, that when I was interviewing for superintendent positions, I moved to my left hand because I didn't want them to know that I was a single mother. That post got the most interactions, the most shares, the most activity, and I post a lot of content. I share that because what people care about is who you are as a person and how they can relate to you more than anything else. Use social media for everything it can offer you. Okay. All right. So, John, we're going to get to the point where we're doing the questions. If you want to go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll do questions. And in the workbook, just as you're doing that, John, in the workbook, there are a couple different QR codes, one for a quick quiz if you're curious kind of where you're at with social justice work, because that's really the focus of a lot of the work I do. But also there's an opportunity to schedule a quick one-on-one with me if I can support with helping you identify your values, your goals, just be someone to motivate you to realize that you're not in this alone. I'm here to support, and I really respect and appreciate John. So however I can help, I'm here.
Beacon is a national community of senior-level business leaders committed to sharing, helping, and learning. To find out more, go to beaconforlife.org.